Hey, welcome back. So in the last video, I talked about upgrading to Audacity 3.7.8, and I mentioned that there's a bug change that I really see as a new feature. So I wanted to talk about that. Let's take a look at Audacity and I'll show you what I mean. This is a bit of recording that represents a chapter in an audiobook. And this is a specific application that I want to use to demonstrate the change in this particular feature that I think can be really useful for a lot of different uses, but this one in particular, I know a lot of you might be interested in. So if I have this finished chapter, and we're going to pretend this is a whole chapter, and we've got a chapter number, and then a chapter title, and then the text of the chapter, and the silence at the end. And we all work to specifications that the silences at the beginning and in between and so forth need to be specific lengths, right? And so we typically record more than what we need and then trim to the appropriate length. So this is where a new change to the Truncate Silence effect can be really helpful. So I'm going to select the whole chapter and I'm going to go to Effect and Special and Truncate Silence. And there's this new section at the bottom that's been added, Truncate Location. And by default, they're all selected. All right, so I've been tinkering around with this a little bit, so I had these unchecked. But here's the interesting part. What Truncate Silence does is it uses the settings that you set for threshold and the duration of the silence to find areas that are considered to be silence or in room noise in effect, right? We set by the threshold. And it can truncate those to the specified length. So I'm going to set this to truncate detected silence, and I'm going to say, in the first place, truncate to 1/2 second, and I only want to remove it from the beginning. So I have my whole chapter selected, and if I apply that, you can see that the beginning of the chapter is truncated to 1/2 second. Really, really useful if you're doing an audiobook, for example, that requires 1/2 second before the beginning of the chapter. Then we have the chapter number and the chapter title, and those need to be shorter. There needs to be 1/2 second there, and then there needs to be 2.5 seconds in the middle and 3.5 seconds at the end. So I'm going to leave the whole thing selected for now, and I'm going to go back to the Truncate Silence again, and this time I'm going to change it to remove it from the end, and I'm going to set it to 3.5 seconds. And when I apply that, we can see that the end gets truncated to 3.5 seconds. Really, really useful. Now the interesting part is I can make a selection of a portion of the chapter, and now I can use the same Truncate Silence again and go to remove silence from the middle and truncate that to 1/2 second and apply that. And now that's 1/2 second of silence. The interesting thing is I could have done the beginning and that one by highlighting from there to the beginning and then selecting beginning and middle on the dialogue and had both of them done with a 1/2 second interval. And then I can select this one and do the same thing and go back to Truncate Silence again. And this needs to be 2.5 seconds. So if I set that to 2.5 seconds, and hit that, now I have my 2.5 second interval there, and I know it's correct, and it'll meet the specs that I need to have done. The really cool thing about this is these options can be used in a macro. So you can set up your own macros to do the interval at the head, the interval between the chapter number and the chapter title, if any, and then the interval between that and the beginning of the text, and the silence at the end of the chapter on their own macros, and then you don't have to fiddle around with the menus at all. You can just use your macro commands. So I think that's a really useful addition to the Truncate Silence effect, and I hope you find it useful as well. As always, I hope this helps. I'm Stuart.